Hey, hey, hey. Happy Tuesday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, shockingly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. And for our final evening, we are also sponsored by Roll for Combat and their Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm Kickstarter. I'll talk about that in just a few moments. But welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. This is live stream number 1109. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out, super casual. Just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news. And then I'll usually pontificate on a topic related to our hobby. And tonight, I'll actually be talking about something related to our hobby and the upcoming holiday this month, Halloween. That's right. Tonight, I am going to share 5 novels, horror novels to be precise, which would actually make for some pretty fantastic role-playing campaigns. So stay tuned. We'll be talking about that in just a bit. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And of course, because this is a live stream, that means there is chat available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. And you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least 10 minutes. I know, 10 whole minutes before you can take part in chat. But if you check both those boxes and you'd like to say howdy, maybe get a question, a comment, by all means, chime in and I'll do my very best to respond. First out the gate tonight is Gleeman RX, and Mike is here, Semper Buffo, Coco B, Tessie Trekkie, good friend of the show, the Madman, Kochansky, and Pete's Dracolich, as well as Keithulu, are already in chat. I will take a guess. The lovely and talented Miss Sarah D, another of our chat moderators, might just be lurking in the shadows. The shadow knows. But unlike the shadow, she's got a glittery banhammer, and you don't want to get smacked with that because the glitter just will never come out. Ever. W Forge is also popping on into chat. Welcome, everybody. So, as I mentioned, tonight is the last evening of sponsorship by Roll for Combat. That's right. And their Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm. So, I am going to share their Kickstarter video one final time.
Listen up, Dungeon Masters. Your players are falling asleep at the table. What? Your wizard is going to use catapult to throw rocks at a monster again? How about instead of that, the wizard covers their body in rocks and hurls themselves? Now you're thinking like a badass using Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm. Filled with over 150 innovative elemental monsters, new elemental spells, and the monster parts system, allowing you to craft weapons, armor, and magic items from the creatures you slay, infusing elemental magic into them with 20 unique elements. Sure, there's classics like air, earth, fire, and water, but there's even weirder elements like music, space, and time. Doctor Who, Doctor You.
Wait, I'm a player, not a dungeon master. Why should I give a shit?
Well, Yahtzee, how about a brand new character archetype, the Monster Hunter? Climb on creatures, target specific body parts, and weaken them. Or just grab a small monster and use their attacks against the big one.
Ooh, you sold me at big ones.
Best of all, this archetype can fit along any class. Fighter Monster Hunter? Duh. Monk Monster Hunter? Sure. Wizard Monster Hunter? Well, it'll set the difficulty up, but go right ahead. Elemental Storm is filled with over 250 pages packed with stunning illustrations, detailed rules on the monster parts system, and so much more for your Pathfinder 2e and D&D 5th edition games. Click on the link below or head on over to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com to secure your copy of Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm today, and turn your table from slow and crunchy to fast and furious.
Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm's Kickstarter is fully funded. I think it did eventually crack the 100% funding mark, or at least came pretty darn close. And of course, the book is available for either 5e Dungeons and Dragons or 2nd edition Pathfinder. You can reserve a copy of the hardcover in the flavor of your choice. It's a little piece of hair goes bounding along on my nose. It's like, get out of here. Get off me. Get off me. Anyway, you can reserve a copy for the flavor of your choice through today, because today is the final day of this Kickstarter. That hardcover is going to require a $60 pledge, or you can score just the PDF alone for a $30 pledge through the end of the day. And expected delivery is next spring. Very nice, very nice. And of course, one last time, I will tease you with the book. Well, I see Steven from Roll for Combat's not in here. So here you go. Another quick peek. Flashed it to you. Because I was sworn to secrecy on that book. Yes. Actually, it does look pretty cool. The Battlezoo Bestiaries, well, I gotta say, most bestiaries for role-playing games do pretty well. They tend to be pretty interesting. And the Battlezoo Bestiaries are certainly no exception to that. All right, Matt Rost and Dice Tales are both popping on into chat. Dice Tales says, YouTube's getting to be like real TV. I keep tuning in just in time for the commercials. You know, strangely enough, I've noticed that YouTube is putting loads more commercials into my uploads automatically, and then I'm actually removing them. But it still doesn't help that after this stream ends, it takes about 12 to 14 hours for the video to process, where I can actually go and add an end screen and things like that. And normally for the live show, there are no ads. So if you happen to end up watching this after the stream ends, before tomorrow morning at about 9 a.m. Central Time rolls around, there probably aren't any ads. Just saying. Just saying. Keith Ulu was asking if I was flashing you folks again. Just with the book. Just with the book. Sarah D said she got lost in her crafting, didn't notice the time. Says for whatever reason, YouTube won't send a notification unless they unlock their phone these days. That's kind of weird. Kind of bizarre. Roger Perdome, Kathy Evans, and Kevin R. Smith are also swinging on in. All right, let's jump on into the news, because arriving in stores tomorrow, supposedly, from Chaosium Inc. is Lands of RuneQuest Dragon Pass. Here's the scoop. Enter the domain of magic and myth. Within the world of Glorantha lies Dragon Pass, an intensely magical region, a home to war and wonder, the birthplace of gods. Lands of RuneQuest Dragon Pass is a player and game master expansion for the signature setting of Bronze Age fantasy. New and expanded homelands for your RuneQuest adventure, including Sartar, Esroila, I think it's Esroilia, Lunar Tarsh, the Grazelands, Wintertop, and the Wilds. It includes the detailed history of Dragon Pass from the fabled god time to its occupation by the mighty Lunar Empire. Additional guidelines for character creation, including new occupations and backgrounds for your RuneQuest adventures. Details on villages, towns, cities, ruins, and places of interest throughout Dragon Pass. I can't read today. Throughout Dragon Pass, perfect for running a sandbox-style RuneQuest campaign. Also, new creatures, monsters, and spirits to encounter. A roster of famous and generic characters to include in adventures of your own devising. Lands of RuneQuest, of course, is obviously designed for use with the RuneQuest role-playing game. And this 192-page book supposedly lands in stores tomorrow, carrying an MSRP of $44.99. I'm going to assume the PDF is also going to be available tomorrow, and it'll be over at Drive-Thru RPG for $22.99. The reason why I mention it's supposed to hit stores tomorrow is, as of right now, Chaosium Inc. does not have an order page up for Lands of RuneQuest. This is the same thing that happened with their previous release for Call of Cthulhu, The Order of the Stone. They didn't have anything up on the website until the day it went on sale. Kind of weird. Now, Amazon is indicating that this book will be available on October 31st. I don't know, but Chaosium Inc. said October 9th, and I just received this. So I will have a first look video of Lands of RuneQuest Dragon Pass tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. I will do my best to get a review out as soon as I possibly can. But once again, it just showed up. So kind of weird. Kind of weird things going on with Chaosium as of late. Just they seem to be off a little bit. Don't know. Do not know. Moving right along. Now available at Exalted Funeral is The Last Hand, a horror role-playing game. And here's what I know, partners. The Last Hand, a horror role-playing game, is a standalone, GM-less, no-prep RPG for 2 to 6 players, intended for a single session of play. Taking on the role of struggling survivors, you must work together to escape an unknown horror that slowly reveals its true nature as it pursues you, while hedging your bets to be the one to make it out alive during the last hand. Emulating aspects of Texas Hold'em, you'll take turns as the dealer leading scenes, deciding how the cards affect the story, and adding details to the creature to realize what has been released upon the world. The game facilitates the combination of warranted distrust and obligatory cooperation that is a staple of the horror genre. You can survive, but you must work together, and there will likely be casualties. There will be casualties. It is out there, and it will stalk you relentlessly. Don't be the one that gets left to die. This 28-page saddle-stitched zine with PDF is available for an MSRP of $12 over at Exalted Funeral. And I will mention, strangely enough, this is also available over at Drive-Thru RPG, just in PDF, and it's $15. It's like, what? Like, I don't know. So Kevin R. Smith says they got interrupted by another of those non-existent ads. YouTube must be putting in ads whether I like it or not. I did mention if you watch this after the stream ends, that there probably are not ads in it. I have no control over the number of advertisements that YouTube is putting into the live streams. So just pointing this out. So I have to monetize this somehow, so. But yes, I do understand. It seems as if YouTube is pushing a lot more advertising in the videos as of late. And I have taken a look to see if there's a way for me to like lower the frequency. And I am at the lowest frequency, so I can only take a guess what it must be like for like a higher frequency of ads. Maybe it's all advertisements and then interspaced with a little bit of the video. I don't know. Dice Tales says, sounds like Chaosium's trying to give a boost to the friendly local game stores. I don't know. I mean, like I said, the distributors all indicated that it's October 9th. Well, okay, I shouldn't say they all indicated that. One that I found that gave a date actually was showing that. I'm just pointing out that over on Amazon, they're saying it's not available till October 31st. So it would not be surprising that maybe it's going to be out in game stores earlier. So Kevin R. Smith says, my apologies. I thought you were saying the ads weren't in the live part. Oh, no, we know the ads are popping up for some stupid ass reason. But yes, I have gone in and taken a peek to see, because it's like I can set it to no ads, which means that 90% of the views that this video would get and the other live shows get would have no monetization. So Semper Buffo says there are ways to not show ads during the stream. Okay, I can't say anything. I can't say nothing about it. I get in trouble. Anywho, moving right along, Bundle of Holding is currently offering a money-saving deal on Cthulhu-related releases written by Kenneth Haidt. I've got the deets on the deal. Investigator. Kenneth Haidt's Cthulhu Bundle is a new collection of diverse Cthulhu Mythos ebooks from Atomic Overmind Press by star tabletop role-playing game designer Kenneth Haidt. Designer of Trail of Cthulhu, Night's Black Agents, Suppressed Transmission, that one I'm not familiar with, and more than 70 other RPGs and supplements, Kenneth Haidt has analyzed works of H.P. Lovecraft, such as the 2 Tour de Lovecraft volumes, and has reimagined the mythos in gaming sourcebooks like Dubious Shards, The Tarot of Cthulhu, and Adventures into Darkness. This new offer brings you all this Haitian edition for an unbeatable bargain price. For just $14.95, you get all 6 titles in our Haidt collection as DRM-free PDFs, including Tour de Lovecraft, The Tales, Expanded Edition, and Tour de Lovecraft, The Destinations. 3 Mythos volumes drawn from the October 2013 Bundle of Tentacles, Cthulhu 101, Tarot of Cthulhu, Major Arcana, and Dubious Shards, as well as an alternate history source book describing Lovecraft's comic book work, Adventures into Darkness. These savings will run through October 21st. Not too shabby, not too shabby. I will point out I have my review of The Fall of Delta Green by Ken Haidt on the horizon. I will have that out for everybody to check out this month. We'll certainly have it out before Halloween. I know we already have a review of it, but it's a written review. I've never actually taken a peek at it prior to receiving a copy from Pelgrane Press. Kevin Thorpe is with us tonight. Good to see you, Kevin. All right, moving right along. Pre-orders have begun for the Tomb of 1,000 Doors Mega Dungeon for Mauserita from ManaDawn Tabletop Games. I've got the skinny. Gather up picks and shovels and prepare packs as you delve deep into the forgotten stronghold of a Mad Mouse King, the Tomb of 1,000 Doors, a mega dungeon for the rules light fantasy adventure role-playing game Mauserita. All right, I'll play it straight. It's a deep and dark dungeon down there, and it will not be fair on a little mouse. But if you are cautious and maybe a bit daring and reckless, you may be able to retrieve unnumbered riches. And if you delve for long enough, you may just uncover the greatest treasure of all mouse kind. A collaborative effort by the Burn Pile Press Creative Collective, the Mouse Ritter Discord, and the Mouse Ritter third-party community. Tomb of 1,000 Doors is a mega dungeon campaign setting for Mouse Ritter, with over 30 unique dungeons all connected into a massive labyrinth of a structure. Tomb of 1,000 Doors will bring literally hundreds of hours of potential gameplay to your table. Within this mega dungeon are 28 keyed dungeon locations, over 250 rooms, over 100 subterranean and pocket dimension hexes, 4 rival adventuring parties, 5 fleshed out factions, 8 boss level monsters and or wandering monsters, over 25 new creatures, 36 random treasures, 6 species of magical mushroom, over 50 named and described magical items, and over 100,000 potential pips to be recovered, and so much more. Right now, you can pre-order the 92-page hardcover. Sounds like a whole hell of a lot packed into 92 pages for $50. Or you can actually go to the itch.io website, the address I'm showing right now. You can pick up the PDF. It's not going to be exactly what's going to be in the hardcover, as far as I understand. But you can get the PDF by naming your own price. Whatever you want to pay for it, you can. Now, I do understand that the physical edition, the files for it are just about ready to be sent to the printer. And I got to say, this looks pretty cool. This looks mighty interesting. 38 dungeons. Pretty wild. Now, I will mention, if you are curious, how come I haven't started covering Mouse Ritter as well as the estate for Mouse Ritter. I will be sharing coverage of both of those in November because it is New School November. And in my opinion, Mouse Ritter is closer to New School than it is Old School, like we've been taking a look at this month for Old School October. But I really do think this looks mighty interesting. Looks mighty cool. Dice Tales asks, is there a partridge in a pear tree? It's packed. Kachansky says the only ads that anybody likes around here are the intermission ones. Oh, yes. And you will be receiving those. Kevin King says another mega dungeon for the ADHD generation. Well, I do believe that Mouse Ritter is, I think, once again, I'm not positive because I haven't really started delving into it yet. But I thought the adventures tend to be just kind of like almost like 1 or 2 pages in length. I thought there's some adventures that are out there that are actually on kind of like trifolds. So, Gleeman RX says, New School November. Wasn't it going to be Castles and Crusades November? No, I was talking about Castles and Crusades is supposed to have their Foundry module done sometime in November. and I had considered maybe running Castles and Crusades, but no, it is not. The Castles and Crusades coverage is part of this month. So that's why you've gotten what, three Castles and Crusades videos. I've got more coming. Don't worry. Don't worry. But no, November is New School November. And I have mentioned that a few times already this month. All right, final news piece available in print and PDF from Blackoath Entertainment is Salvage and Sorcery Scrap Hounds of Cygnus. And here's the latest. Welcome to Salvage and Sorcery Scrap Hounds of Cygnus. In it, you play as a scrap hound working for the Reclamation Corps aboard the giant pile of junk known as Thanatos Station. Your home is Oblivion's Edge, a dying star system choked by warp storms and populated by fractured spacefaring factions. Humanity, once a dominant force, clings to survival on decaying space hulks and shattered moons. Fortunately for the millions of souls living aboard Thanatos, the station orbits Cygnus, a ravaged planet where techno-barbarians and mutated creatures lurk, all vying for scraps in a broken world. Those living on the station can do little else but organize raids down to the surface in an attempt to find ancient tech and resources to survive. As a scrap hound, your job is to go out on missions and complete them as efficiently as possible, be it by rescuing a captured civilian, sabotaging an enemy operation, or simply ransacking some old facility. In the process, you'll find tons of loot, enemies to kill, and challenges to overcome. Salvage and Sorcery Scrap Hounds of Cygnus features an original setting, mixing elements of grimdark science fiction, etherpunk, and space fantasy from the 70s and 80s. There's a simple D6 dice pool rule set, which is easy to grasp and fun to play. Squad-focused gameplay, whether you're a solo player or a group of friends. You can play with one of the 4 available careers: Tech Knight, Warp Weaver, Gunslinger, and Scrapper. And forget about having to micromanage NPCs. As you progress through the game, your character will gain new abilities, allowing you to personalize their power set through a selection of talents. Will your Tech Knight focus on reinforcing their control over the ancient exoshell? Or will they choose the path of the Eldritch Archblade? Fast, simple gameplay focused around randomly generated missions, fighting your way through randomly generated facilities that range from ruined cities to decaying terraforming stations, derelict spaceships, and more. Loot, loot, loot! With over 100 unique pieces of loot to find, you will always be excited to see what the next big baddie drops. And there's also RPG guidance. Although the core experience and gameplay loop aren't a true role-playing game, there are rules to run your own RPG campaign in the Oblivion's Edge setting, with many different tables to help you plan your Scrap Hound's next adventure. The 203-page premium hardcover with PDF can be had over at Drive-Thru RPG for $50. If you want to just grab the PDF alone, you can do so for $15. Sounds cool. Right? It really does. It sounds pretty interesting here. Yes, very, very nice. John Snyder's with us in chat. Welcome aboard. Dicetail says, sounds like things are hanging by a thread. Maybe they should have called it Damocles. Yeah, that probably would not be a bad idea. Kevin King says, if it's a mashup of Ian Flux, Wizards, and heavy metal, they'd be interested. I don't know. I don't think. Although it did say science fantasy of the 70s and 80s. And yeah, I guess Ralph Bakshi's Wizards would be considered science fantasy. I always consider it more a fantasy movie than anything else. But yeah. Yeah, I'll be the first to point out I never actually watched Aeon Flux. I think I watched 1 or 2 episodes on MTV and I was like, eh. But I did used to get heavy metal all the time. In fact, I was buying heavy metal when I was 12. Yeah. Always helped to look older than I was. Yes. John Snyder said their daughter Maddie is watching too. Well, welcome Maddie as well. And funny enough, my niece's name is Madison. We call her Maddie also. So Cthulhu says the chain sword of Damocles. Nice. Very nice. So once again, this is available now over at Drive-Thru RPG. That's it for the news tonight. Of course, I was just talking about Drive-Thru RPG. Don't forget the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit Drive-Thru RPG, Storyteller's Vault, War Game Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, any of those One Bookshelf sites, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. Also, if you like this video, if you like the video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can always swing on over to paypal.me/thegaminggang to make a small donation. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Oh, that's wet. And there are folks out there who happen to pop on over to paypal.me/thegaminggang and make not small donations, such as our good friends Agile Monk, Joshua Edwards, the Madman, Kevin King. Those are some of our most recent folks that friends of the show, I guess we will say, who popped on by. So thank you very kindly. Daryl Eretz and Peaceful Porcupine, as well as Endarius Termina, are popping on into chat. Welcome to you all. Dicel says in Aeon Flux, she dies like in every episode, then she's back next episode with no explanation whatsoever. I think that was the reason I wasn't watching it. I started watching it, and then it was like, what? And I thought, wait a second, did I somehow, because they used to, like, at one point, they would air the episodes back to back, and I just stumbled onto it. It wasn't like, I was like, oh, hey, this is on tonight. Let me check this out. I was flipping channels or whatever, and I was like, oh, hey, this is that Aeon Flux. And she got killed, and then another episode followed it, and then she was back, and I thought, well, wait a second. Did I just see the end of the series, and now they're picking the series back up again? Like in a rotation, right? I was like, I'm confused. Shanbot B42 is popping on in. Welcome. All right. Yes, Kachansky says, like Kenny in South Park. Cthulhu said the same thing. Shanbot V42 says that's because Peter Chung, the creator, meant for her to die so he would be done with the cartoon. It just kept asking him for more short animation clips, even more so. It's like I remember the Max. And funny enough, the comic of the Max is almost identical to the Max that was on MTV. I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool. I think they tweaked it a little bit. I think they made it a little less dark. I mean, there was still, I forget what the Outback was called. the mystical outback. But yes, Roger Perdome is also hanging with us tonight. Welcome aboard. Dicedale says, it was the 80s. It doesn't have to make sense. Yes, Sam Keith, who was just, I don't know if he's still around, but just an absolute excellent artist. Really good stuff. Pete Strakolich is saying the same thing. Sam Keith is awesome. All righty. So tonight I am going to talk about 5 horror novels that I believe would make for some really excellent role-playing game campaigns. Of course, you can float some ideas out in chat as well. And of course, if you happen to be watching this later on Memorex, by all means, share some thoughts in the comments section. But like I said, we're going to talk about some horror novels, which I think would port over really nicely to role-playing games. But first, I think it's going to be time for a brief intermission.
You have time to visit the snack bar before the feature picture starts. So visit the snack bar now to pick up a little something to nibble on or sip on, like crisp, hot, buttery popcorn. Or a sparkling, tasty, refreshing soft drink. And a wide selection of tempting, delicious candy.
Way down in old Virginia, 300 years ago, Captain John Smith and Pocahontas shot their meat and aged it slow. They smoked it and they spiced it too, for flavor at its best. Genuine Smithville barbecue surpasses all the rest.
Most great American traditions get better with the tellin', but James River's Smithfield barbecue gets better with the eatin'. At Smithfield, we still use the same famous recipe of herbs and spices. Our barbecue is still slow simmered in our secret sauce to perfection. And just like always, James River's Smithfield barbecue is good enough to be a great snack, hearty enough to fill a pioneer's appetite. You'll understand why John Smith stayed in Old Virginia. One of the best things about this tradition is we make it quick and easy for you. Be sure to visit our concession stand now for James River's Smithfield Barbecue.
Do you drink Wilkins coffee?
No!
Oh, things just seem to happen to people who don't drink Wilkins.
Ben Mears has been away too long. And now at last, he's come home.
The men fought at Valley Forge.
Daddy, come back safe.
Home to the childhood memories, to the old familiar faces, to a life unmolested by time.
And with your saints, let him rejoice in your presence forever. We ask it through Christ our Lord, amen.
Home to Salem's Lot, a town too good to be true.
What was that?
Did you happen to notice the time when the boys left?
We shouldn't have gone through the woods.
It's a shortcut.
Well, they should have been here half an hour ago.
Wait! Danny, wait!
Something is happening. Something terrible.
Henry! Where's Ralphie? Ralph.
Where's your brother?
First the kid disappears, then this. You're not leaving Salem's Lot, are you?
I'm not leaving.
Don't you understand what's happening?
Do you?
Yes, I do. It's in the Marston house.
Good evening. I dreamed.
You slept there all night?
Yeah. A little tired. Didn't sleep much last night. I was dreaming. Somebody out there.
Sweet dreams.
I let him in.
Oh, it's only all just happened
Since I came here.
It wasn't a dream.
You can do nothing against the master.
They're breeding on one another. The vampires are creating vampires.
The master wants you.
It's a geometric progression. 2 times 2 times 4 times 8.
There's a dead man upstairs.
Bill! Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil.
Look at me. Ned Tibbetts' body has disappeared from the morgue.
Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Bill!
And Susan's in there. Run! No! Look at him! Stephen King, the best-selling author of Carrie and The Shining, takes you on a startling journey to Salem's Lot.
Scary kids, scary. Good old Salem's Lot, 1979. I remember picking up the book Salem's Lot before the miniseries, because it was 2 parts, if I remember correctly, aired. And I picked it up, and it had that same kind of trade dress as we saw at the end of that trailer. And it was like soon to be a television miniseries or something like that. I remember picking it up. It was the first Stephen King book I had ever read. And I probably would have been 11. I've mentioned this before. When I was a kid, I was reading like college level when I was probably about 10. So I still love to read. Don't get me wrong. I wish I had more time to be able to like read for pleasure, because most of the reading I do now is this kind of stuff, right? So I can do reviews and that. But I'll never forget picking that up, and it was like blew my mind. You know, Salem's Lot, for crying out loud. For like a 10-year-old kid, 11-year-old kid, I guess I would have been, I guess I probably was 11, thereabouts. Yes. So very nice, very nice. I have not watched the new movie that just came out. I am not hearing good things. Only thing I've heard is that the ending is better than the other 2 adaptations. Because I remember watching the Salem's Lot adaptation that starred, Rob Lowe. I almost said Ricky Schroeder. I was like, what? No, Rob Lowe. And it was fine. It was okay. When I would say I like the David Soul adaptation better, which, if you did not know this, was actually directed by Tobe Hooper. Not that he was a great director by any stretch, but he did have some horror chops. And the reason why you saw that as a trailer is because outside the United States, it was released as a film. It was trimmed down a little bit and released as a movie. So there's that. All right. So let's see. Lord Cthulhu 01 is popping on in. So they said they're planning on running Coffee Break of the Damned for their group this Halloween. Why does that ring a bell? W4 Return to Salem's Lot. I remember, was there a movie? Because I know there's a short story in, is it Graveyard Shift? that's actually tied into Salem's Lot. And then, of course, there's another short story that they made a series, and it was with, wasn't it Adrian Brody was in it? And it's like about Jerusalem's Lot, but like 150 or 200 years before the book. I don't know. Don't know. But I seem to recall, I think that is based on a short story. I don't think it was something that Stephen King created just for television. I don't think that was the case. So I thought I saw someone else had popped in. Oh, yes, Keldon has decided to hang with the gang. Very nice. Daryl Erritz says, I probably haven't read 5 horror novels. Necroscope by Brian Lumley could make for a good game. I seem to recall I read, I think it was the first 2 in that series. And I liked it. And then if I remember correctly, I think my best friend Elliot had read it, and he had said, "Oh yeah, just so you know, this series starts getting really like, I think if I remember right, he was talking about how it got really convoluted." And I was like, "Oh really?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, maybe not." Lord Cthulhu 01 says that Coffee Break of the Damned is the adventure that's included with the Game Master screen. John Snyder says Chapel Wait was the Adrian Brody show. Yeah, I didn't see that. I did not see it. Funny enough, it's because if I don't catch a show and then I hear, oh, it's been canceled after one season or maybe 2 seasons, I kind of take a pass usually. So there's been a few things that I started watching, and then all of a sudden I hear, oh, shit, they canceled it? Forget it. Kevin Thorpe says Silver Bullet is their favorite. Wow, really? As far as my favorite adaptation, of course, it is just wonderful. But as far as like television goes, I think it's the original adaptation of The Stand is what I would say. All right, so tonight's topic, we're going to talk about 5 horror novels, which I think would make for excellent tabletop role-playing game campaigns. Now, keep in mind, they wouldn't necessarily be real long campaigns for some of these. Maybe you're looking at 3-4 sessions, thereabouts. In fact, there's one that I would think you could probably turn it into like 3 sessions. I think would do very nicely. But I would say, first of all, got to go with Dracula, Bram Stoker. That's obvious. So, funny enough, a lot of people, of course, have seen various different Dracula films, ranging from Bela Lugosi to Frank Langella to Gary Oldman. But a lot of those people have never actually read the novel, which just the way it's put together is pretty interesting, especially given the time it was written, because it's written in diary entries, and Dr. Seward is experimenting with wax cylinders and a recording device and things like that. And Darius Terminus says Dracula was based on Carmilla. That's how I've heard it pronounced. I don't know. It could be Carmilla. Yes, I'm familiar with that story too. But I honestly think that would do really well, because if you think about it, of course, if you're adapting a novel or short story, whatever, to a role-playing game, adventure, campaign, what have you, you have to, for one, figure out, okay, so where do we pick up the action? Because you're not going to have everybody sitting around the table as, the Jonathan Harker character. The player gets to go and, oh, okay. So, they're at Castle Dracula, they're in Transylvania, and everybody else is sitting around role-playing the courtship of Lucy Westerna. No. So I would think that you would want to, in fact, this would probably be the case with maybe not every one of these novels I'm going to talk about, but the majority of them, that you would probably want to start the action in, isn't it called in media res? Where it's like, you start like right in the action. Like, oh, we're being chased down the street. Stuff like that. Michael Burrell is with us as Best Dracula, Leslie Nielsen in Dracula Dead and Loving It. Yeah, okay. So W. Forge is taking guesses here. I think what's on the agenda. Last Man on Earth is their guess, which would be I Am Legend. As Kevin King also mentioned that, it's I Am Legend. So yeah. Anywho. So I could see, and of course you don't have to sit there, you don't have to have, oh, okay, Mina Harker, Jonathan Harker, or anything like that. I mean, you can just do Victorian era characters. And of course, you're going to tweak things because you're not going to play it just like the novel because it's like, okay, all the players are going to know what's going to happen. But I think that would do really well. And I'm surprised that we have never actually seen a role, at least as far as I understand, that we have never seen a role-playing game release that created that setting. I would think that you could easily use just about any relatively rules light system to pull that off too. Because the reality is, it's not as if the humans have any supernatural powers or anything like that. Okay, maybe Van Helsing maybe has some arcane knowledge of some sort. But yeah, I think that would be pretty good. Some talk about the Dresden Files. I'll be honest, I am not overly familiar with the Dresden Files. I listened to, I want to say, the first audiobook, and it just didn't grab me. So there we go. And Darius Terminus says Vaesen for Dracula would be really good. I think that would be pretty good too. I agree. John Snyder says The Last Voyage of the Demeter was a good movie. I did not see it. I know it's what it's about, obviously enough. Yeah, you know what? That could be a pretty interesting one shot. Yeah, because there's a few things like, now this wasn't in my list here, but I don't know if you're familiar with The Ruins, which is really dark. And I'll be the first to admit, I am not super keen on horror stories or movies that end like really on a down note. Not really a fan. And The Ruins is certainly a novel like that. I did not see the movie simply because the novel itself was like, man, that's a bummer. Plus, I'm not going to spoil anything, even though the book's been out for, I don't know, 20 plus years. Plus, some of the stuff just was a little goofy. If you know the story, there's some certain aspects to it, you're like, really? Michael Burrell says, you must have hated The Mist. I did not see The Mist. I did not see it because I was familiar with the short story. So I was like, And I want to say, yeah, it was my brother and my sister-in-law went to see it. And my sister-in-law stormed out of the movie when that certain thing happens before they're found. So she was not a happy camper, and she likes horror movies too. So Keldon says, Cthulhu fan admits not fan of horror stories with bad endings. No, I said downer endings. I don't mind bad endings for characters, but just, you have to have read The Ruins to understand what I'm talking about. Or, well, no, I have heard that the end of the movie, they cut the original ending that they filmed because the crowds did not like it. But they did make a movie of The Ruins, and I remember the director had said that they went with the ending that because they shot a few different endings, and they went with the ending that they used because if they had ended the movie like the novel ended, the audience would have wanted to kill them. Those were his words, I swear. All right, so we got Dracula. Next up, an absolutely fabulous horror novel is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. It's one of the most famous horror novels out there. The film The Haunting is excellent. I know it's in black and white. I know there are some folks out there who refuse to watch films in black and white. Make an exception because it really does provide some really good scares without resorting to, gore or anything like that. So The Haunting of Hill House would make for an interesting short campaign. This is one where I would think it would probably be 2, maybe 3 sessions. And I would think you would need to be a pretty solid game master to pull it off, because you would have to create the same sort of psychological tension as what's in the novel as well as the movie. But, something else, we were talking about Richard Matheson in chat, who was the author of I Am Legend. And he did, isn't it The Legend of Hell House? I think that's the title of it. And it was sort of his riff on the haunted house. And I think he was inspired by The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. You could maybe pick some things from that to include in. Because if I remember correctly, because they even made a film of Hell House. I want to say Roddy McDowell's in it. I haven't seen it in decades. But if I remember right, that was played more for scares, like, horror movie horror, as opposed to The Haunting, which just creeps you out with very little by way of, actual occult things going on, just strangeness. Keithulu says The Haunting was excellent, and a line from it was included at the beginning of Supercharger Heaven by White Zombie. Pepe Clifton is joining us. Might be a first-time visit for Pepe. Said, I have read I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream That could make an interesting little one shot. Isn't that Harlan Ellison? Shanbot B42 says, The Road by Cormac McCarthy would make a really intense survival horror game. Yeah, so would Blood Meridian. I mean, that would... Strangely enough, Cormac McCarthy's writing, I think The Road is probably an example of a film that I think they did an okay job of adapting Cormac McCarthy's novel. Because I've seen the film, I've read the book. But a lot of his stuff is not easy to film, to bring to life. That's why now I could have swore that I thought they have done Blood Meridian, or they're filming Blood Meridian. But that's another one where it's sort of like, Kevin King says, if memory serves, the Shirley Jackson novel delved deeply into the psychology of the protagonist. Not sure how it would translate to gaming. Easy. So what you're looking at, number one, yes, you have the protagonist, but what you're looking at is you would be doing a group of characters who are essentially one's a parapsychologist. They're all like ghost hunters. So that's what they're doing, is they're all ghost hunters. So that's where that story would come from. As far as, yes, I understand where you're getting at. And the conclusion of that, the book and the film, I think that it's more ambiguous in the book what causes, what the hell is her name? It's not Claire. Claire is the psychic. Eleanor, that's it. Yeah, I understand. The Eleanor character, who is sort of our, I guess it's what we see the story through her eyes, essentially. But it's not like first person. Yeah, I guess, yeah. Let's see. Belagan, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce the last name. Sorry about that. I believe first time visit in chat. Welcome aboard. They did a short series of The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, which was not really like the book at all, as far as I understand. I didn't watch it. So, Indarius Termina says Dan Simmons' The Terror would be an amazing survival cosmic horror story to adapt. Well, guess what? Second on our list, or I should say third on our list, is The Terror by Dan Simmons. Yes. I would have to say the AMC series it could have been trimmed a little bit. It could have been shorter by probably about 2 hours. If I remember right, I think it was 8 episodes of The Terror. And that would make for an excellent campaign. Now, interestingly enough, all of these, you would have to be running some sort of a modern system, or at least modern era sort of system for them. You know, you're not looking at, oh, well, yeah, we adapted 5e. I guess maybe you could, but I mean, you're just looking, like, the characters themselves are all just going to be regular folk, just going to be normal people. So if you're not familiar with The Terror, it is about one of the expeditions to find the Northwest Passage, because especially England was just fascinated by the concept that there was a Northwest Passage. and they were constantly sending explorers up there. So, and this is this is real. This is historical. Now, what happens in the Terror isn't, but two ships go up there. One is the HMS Terror, and I'm trying to remember the name of the other. It's got kind of a regular, relatively normal name. And of course, they're up in the Arctic and they're frozen in. And that was not something that you wanted to happen, being on a wooden ship. So it is a horror story, don't get me wrong. Very, very interesting. And yes, the Franklin expedition. Oh, the Erebus. Thank you, Indarius Termina. Yes, the other ship is the Erebus. And they were some of the earliest icebreakers. They weren't very good icebreakers. But yeah, so it was the real life Franklin expedition that, no spoilers here, is they were all lost. And no one knew whatever happened to them until more recent times. In fact, I think it was the Erebus that they found. Oh, they found both of them. That's right. And Darius Termina is pointing that out. So Keldon asks, they named the ship HMS Terror? Yes. You got to keep in mind, though, it was originally a warship. In fact, I think the Erebus was as well, that they did carry cannon. Cthulhu said they were bad at opening conversations. Kevin Thorpe says, use Gaslight Cthulhu for the Terror? Yeah, probably. I would say, sure, you could do that. Let's be honest, though. I mean, really, you could utilize anything. You could utilize Savage Worlds if you wanted. You could do Year Zero engine for any of these. So, yeah, I would think pretty easy. Pretty simple to pull that off. But yeah, I could see the Terror working really, really well. So, W. Ford says, how about Invasion of the Body Snatchers by Jack Finney? Good enough to inspire 3 movies. I would agree on that. I would say yes. I would agree that that would make for, once again, short campaign, because you don't want the story to wear out its welcome. So, yeah, I could see that. I could see Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But you would want to probably leave it off about where you tend to see the films. Where it's like, okay, so it's now broken out. I'm trying to remember. Is it Santa Clarita? Is that the town that it takes place, at least in the novel? And funny enough, just a little side note here. For years, all these people said, "Oh yeah, the movie, the original, is it's just it's about communism, the Red Menace, and the novel. Oh, it's about the Red Menace." And both Jack Finney and the director of the first adaptation were like, I wasn't. It's like, never even entered our minds. Master Jedi Dude is with us. Santa Clara, thank you. I was going to say, as soon as I said Santa Clarita, I was like, no, that's not it. But yeah, I think that would work nicely. All right, 2 more. I don't know how many folks out there have read this book, but it is actually one of my absolute favorite horror novels ever. Sadly enough, it did not end up as a very good film, sadly. And it had like a lot of like old stars in it, like Fred Astaire, John Houseman, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Melvin Douglas is in it. And it is Ghost Story by Peter Straub. And I think this would make for an interesting short campaign. I don't necessarily want to throw spoilers out there, but this is a story about I guess it starts off, it's 5 elderly men who have been friends for 50, 60 years, something like that. And they all share a terrible secret, which you don't learn about until later in the book. And they form this group, this club, and it's called the Chowder Society, if I remember correctly. And it takes place in this small town in like upper New York, Milford or Milburn. I think it's Milburn. Anyway, and there's this young novelist. For some strange reason, a lot of horror stories, a lot of horror novels, their protagonist is, especially Stephen King. Stephen King, his protagonists usually are writers. That is the case in this too, that the main character is also a writer, and it was his uncle, who's part of this Chowder Society, who dies. And that's why he comes to this town. But the reason why I think it would work really well as a role-playing campaign, short campaign, is that the player characters could all be the elderly. And they all share a secret. And then maybe you could have 1 or 2 players who are kind of the younger characters, because in the book, the author is probably in his 30s. Then there's like a teenage kid who's one of the main characters as well, but they don't know what the dark secret is. And I think that would be pretty cool. And what eventually happens is that Alice Krieg, I think that's how her last name's pronounced, it's weird. I don't want to give too much away about the story, because there's a lot of levels to the story. That's why Ghost Story is really, a lot of people consider it to be not just genre fiction, but actually really good literature. But the Chowder Society is gonna pay for their crime. And the town also suffers because of it. So there are a lot, if you're familiar with Ghost Story, especially if you've read the book, you would see where this would work really nicely, as the town is snowed in and people in the town are being hunted, not only by Alice Krieg, but these 2 other characters, and they're Manitou. So they're shapeshifters. So they're not vampires. They're not werewolves per se. Yeah, it's really wild. If you've never read it, I would certainly recommend that. I have listened to an audiobook, but it was years ago, so I don't know what edition might be out there for I just saw somebody mention Delta Green, Communion by Whitley Strieber. Oh wait, he says that's not fiction. Yes. Anyway, but that would make for, a pretty good, you're being hunted sort of role-playing game. Once again, kind of a short campaign. And I think it would be interesting if the majority of your players were playing, they wouldn't have to be necessarily elderly men. You could have elderly women as well. And I think that'd be like kind of an interesting twist for the characters. So I think that would be fairly interesting. And Darius Terminus says, I think the island of Dr. Moreau deserves an honorable mention if it's not among the last couple. Well, we only have one left. It's not a traditional horror novel, often considered more science fiction, but it easily can be. I got to be honest, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the island of Dr. Moreau. Just not. I read it when I was younger, and even at that point, I was kind of like, eh. Well, Lona's Cave is with us tonight. I'm not saying that it wouldn't make for an interesting role-playing campaign, but a lot of these recommendations that are being shared in chat would work more along the lines of like a one-on-one sort of game. One player, one game master, maybe two players and a game master, where I was kind of shooting for something where it would be your usual group that you may have of 4 or 5 players. So, but yeah, I mean, I could see the island of Dr. Moreau. It, like I said, I read it. I remember seeing the movie. Yes, as Master Jedi Dude says, the 1977 version is the best. I think that's the only one I ever saw, is that one. The one with Marlon Brando, I personally thought was awful. I thought it was pretty bad. And I remember I heard stories about just it being a disaster on set. So, but yes. So if I remember correctly, I think the 1970s version has Michael York in it, if I remember correctly. All right. Final novel. And you already got a clue. You saw a clue earlier in the show. And that would be Salem's Lot by Stephen King. Once again, it's the novel, not necessarily the miniseries or the movie that just recently came out, which I guess was in the can for like 2 or 3 years before it got released. That's probably not, red badge of courage for that. I think Salem's Lot would work really nicely. Once again, be something that you would have to pick up sort of not midway through the story, but into the story where the player characters have suspicions about the, oh gosh, now I'm trying to remember the name, Marston House. Yeah, my memory is pretty good. Odd stuff. The Marston House and Barlow and Straker. And you could like start, you'd want to make sure that you have NPCs. Once again, this is probably something that you'd probably have to have a pretty decent game master, because you would be juggling a good number of NPCs, and you would also be tasked in having to try to make these NPCs not only memorable, but when the player characters would lose them, that it would have to really have some impact, emotionally in the game. But just the concept of Dracula essentially is who, Barlow is supposed to be. He's a Nosferatu. In fact, in the 70s, 79, wasn't it? I think it was 79. Salem's Lot that I shared the trailer for. He looks like Nosferatu, the silent film vampire. And I think it would be kind of cool. I think it'd be kind of cool that, because, if you think about it, like there is the Dracula dossier for Night's Black agents. And I think they've also got some other kind of like modern vampire adventures for that. But the thing is, you're like secret agents and stuff like that. You're not playing just as regular people, right? So you would kind of make Salem's Lot more along the lines of what we refer to as a kids on bikes sort of role-playing game, like Pine Box, Texas Middle School, or Kids on Bikes. But you would be doing it as adults. I think that would be pretty cool. I think that would be pretty wild. Master Jedi Dude says Salem's Lot with David Soul is my favorite. That's what I shared the trailer of during tonight's brief intermission. They ran a Deadlands RPG based on that story over 20 years ago. Western horror is so much fun. Keldon said, I knew Salem's Lot would be on here. I picked up what you put down. There you go. Yes. Yeah, I specifically went and found that trailer and made sure that it would not give me a copyright flag. So I'd be like, yes. W. Forge says we need a science fiction novels version of this topic. Didn't I do science fiction? Or was it fantasy? Because I know maybe it was fantasy I did. Maybe about 2 months ago? Thereabouts? Kevin King says, good show, book nerds unite. Yeah, see, that's the thing, though. When we're talking about these sorts of things, and, I'm not saying that the movies are crap or anything like that. Okay, the movie version of Ghost Story is bad. And so much of it is just lost. Now, what's in the novel does not get translated to the screen. It's kind of weird too, because that movie is almost like an 80s horror flick that's aimed at people who were, adults in the 1940s watching movies. It's kind of weird. It's kind of bizarre. But it's important to keep in mind we're talking about the novels, not the movies, because the vast majority of the time, very rarely can I ever think of a situation where the movie was better than the book. Maybe Forrest Gump. Yeah, I think Forrest Gump is probably an example. And funny enough, a lot of people, Forrest Gump was just a major hit. It's like Titanic. Suddenly nowadays people are like, Forrest Gump is awful. No, it's not. Maybe it's not as great a movie as people thought it was when it came out, but it's certainly not awful, just like Titanic. People rip on Titanic. It's like, really? It's like, okay. It's like, yes, move beyond the fucking door and two people could fit on the door part, and maybe you'll actually see it's a pretty good movie. All right. So Pete Stracklich says, I remember because I had very few science fiction recommendations. I read a lot more horror and fantasy. Michael Burrell says, I think the movie Blade Runner is better than the book it's based on. It's far different than the book it's based on. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Well, even if you look at Man in High Castle, another Philip K. Dick novel, the Amazon series, way different than the books. Actually, funny enough, I think if you look at any author who has had their work adapted to film and television, I think Philip K. Dick has probably had the most wholesale changes to his work opposed to, other authors. If you think about it, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's, inspired by Philip K. Dick. And a lot of times it'll have a title that ties into Philip K. Dick. And then it's like, no, that's not how that story is or that book is. Indarius Terminus says, hey, like Titanic could be the ship sinking. You have a timer to get off. Monsters are roaming through the ship too. A horror Titanic actually sounds kind of cool now. Probably end up being better than the adventure that was in The Order of the Stone for Call of Cthulhu that I reviewed very recently. Not very good. Not very good. All right, so there you have it. 5 horror novels that I think would convert very nicely, or you could take major beats from and have some really cool, short tabletop role-playing game campaigns. Something to think about. Something to think about. Once again, I am really surprised. To my knowledge, I don't know of anybody ever actually trying to adapt the novel Dracula to a role-playing game. Even if they made it like kind of sandboxy, not necessarily on rails. I think that would be pretty cool. Master Jedi Dude says Johnny Mnemonic comes to mind. I remember seeing that, but I don't remember anything about it, which usually indicates it wasn't very good. I remember Keanu Reeves. I remember that. W. Ford says, water weirds on the Titanic. Dun, dun, dun. Funny enough, talking about books, talking about the Titanic, Kevin King says Stoker RPG. Isn't it the Stoker verse? Isn't that what they call it? But the thing is, I don't know if they actually adapted Dracula, because I thought the Stoker verse is sort of all of Bram Stoker's books, kind of as a setting. I don't know. I do not know. The only work from Bram Stoker that I'm familiar with is, of course, Dracula. And then, is it Weird of the White Worm? I know it's something White Worm. Lair of the White Worm? I remember reading that. Funny enough, most of Bram Stoker's other writing is not all that well regarded. So you should look into, I want to say, I'm trying to remember. Now, okay, I don't remember the family's name. If you want to encounter something unusual, look into the origins of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and you'll find out about the story that when he was a talent agent, if I remember correctly, and he was touring the United States, and he ran across this story in a newspaper, and it's what inspired him to start looking into, doing some research and things like that. And that's what got him going to write Dracula. So if you're familiar with the podcast lore, which if you are not familiar with it, I highly recommend it, especially if you're into the weird and macabre, or as some folks like to say, macabre. I definitely recommend giving it a listen. And one of the earliest episodes is all about this. In fact, who was it? Was it Amazon? I think it was Amazon gave Lore a couple of seasons as a show where they would adapt one of the stories from the podcast. And it's all true. It's not, none of it's fiction. And they adapted episodes for the series. And I think there was only like 6 episodes in each season. But if memory serves, I know it's the first season. And I think it's actually the first episode is about this story that inspires. And in fact, it's, you know, it's sort of like the surprise twist at the end of the story. Bob Gnarly's Magic Van has pulled up. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I believe this is Bob Gnarly's Magic Van's first visit in chat. John Snyder says, Lore is fantastic. It's my daily listen. I will say, when you first start listening to Lore, especially if you go back to the beginning, which I would actually recommend, I'm trying to remember. It's Aaron Lemke. I think that's how his last name's pronounced. I forget. His first name's Aaron. His presentation, his cadence takes getting used to. And the pace of the show, you have to get used to. Now, I will say, the new episodes, because he's been doing the show for, I don't know, 8, 9 years, maybe 10. I mean, it's been going for quite some time. I think his newer episodes are more, it's either I've listened to his show for so long I don't notice it anymore, or he kind of changed it up a little bit. But yes, I would have to say that I would certainly recommend Lore as something to check out. Another podcast I listen to, and then we'll wrap up. And it's kind of funny because it's sort of, the two hosts of it sort of remind me of my best friend Elliot Miller and I when we were doing the Gaming Gang podcast, because you can tell they've been friends forever. And that is, oh God, now I can't remember the name of the show. Something Legends. For crying out loud. See, there you go. I was just talking about how good my memory is. Oh yeah, I remember. Oh yeah, that's the character's name. Oh, that's the name of the town. And now I'm like, what the hell's the name of it? It's like, damn it. Well, I'll remember. I'll tell you tomorrow. Of course, as soon as I wrap up the show, I'll be like, as far as a topic tomorrow, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm sure I'll come up with something. I will mention next week, there's only going to be one live stream. So we're looking at Tuesday, because I am going to go up to Gamehole Con. I'm going to go up on Wednesday and go pick up my pass, kind of bum around. Probably, just take it easy. And then I'm going to go Thursday and Friday, and then I'm just going to come back home probably Friday night. So there'll only be one episode next week. So it'll be a week from today. And then the week after that, there will not be an episode on the 24th, because that's my birthday. So just letting folks know. So Bob Gnarly's Magic Van says, agreed. Aaron's early delivery was an acquired taste. He definitely took some vocal classes. Yeah, like I said, it was either that I got so used to his cadence and delivery and stuff like that, or that, he had kind of changed it a little bit. But it's not crazy. You're not sitting there like, what the hell? This guy even speaking English? What in the world? W. Forge says 2 things happen when you get older. Your memory gets worse, and I can't remember the second one. Yes, I remember. I remember that. Damn. And it's right on the tip of my tongue, too. And I'm like, ah. But what they do is they actually, and sometimes it's like multiple episodes where they'll tackle something unusual. So they've done things like Detlef Pass, or they did, actually, I think it was 3 or 4 episodes they did of Amelia Earhart's disappearance. But it's usually unusual supernatural stuff. Aaron Menke, that's it. Thank you. I'm Aaron Menke, and this is lore. Bob Gnarly's Magic Fan says they're finally hitting 40. Yeah, okay. Thanks. Thanks a lot. So Madman says, hey, the 24th is your sister-in-law's birthday, and mom's is on the 25th. Yes. So that's why normally what we'll do is we'll get together at my brother's house on the 24th for all 3 of those birthdays. Thank you. Astonishing Legends. That is it. And yes, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And like I said, they do a good amount of supernatural stuff. They'll kind of sprinkle in other stuff too. So very nice. Very nice. All right, everybody. That is it for this time out. If you were watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, bigger thank you, because not only were you keeping me company, but you're keeping each other company as well. And then also kind of jamming my memory on things too, which I appreciate. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, they don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thanks for taking time out to watch any of the over 2,000 videos on the channel. Yes. Of course, also want to thank our friends over at Roll for Combat for being our sponsor for a month plus. And much appreciated. You have one last day today to back the Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm Kickstarter. So if you have not checked it out, you've still got a few hours left to do so. Everybody enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Also let you know when I share other videos, such as my recent reviews of Musketeers versus Cthulhu, and my first look at the 5th edition of Chivalry and Sorcery from Britannia Game Designs Limited. I am looking forward to reviewing this. A lot of people chiming in saying they really love this system. So I've always been curious. So big thank you to the fine folks at Britannia Game Designs Limited for sending that along. So if you have not checked out the video, it's just a first look. It is not a review. Reviews on the horizon. And of course, as I already mentioned, tomorrow I will have my Lands of RuneQuest Dragon Pass first look video up in the wee AM hours tomorrow. All right. Once again, I will be back tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Jeff McAleer. And until I see you next time, unless I don't see you ever again, I certainly hope all of you out there get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.